What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another tattoo practice. This one's going to be a little bit different, not only because of different angle, better light I invested in, and but it's going to be a little bit tutorial-esque, and basically what I'm going to be doing with this video is mainly try to display stipple shading. So for the entire piece, I'm only going to be using liners, and hopefully it turns out well. This design, we're going to be doing this little snail here, and I actually got this design from the, I believe it's called Massive Might Magic the Gathering card. One day I was just looking through my deck and found that card and thought that would be a pretty cool design. But to start with, as always, I'm going to be starting with lining. For this video, I'm using my normal setup. I'm using an 18, an 11, and a 3 round liner from Easy Tattoo, and that'll be it. And for inks, actually, I'm going to say this time, the only inks I'm using is going to be Dynamic Black and Dynamic Triple Black, with no gradients, no anything, just straight black for both of them. And running it on my CNCWE as always, between probably 7 to 9 volts as always. But I'm not going to worry about showing off the lining too much. By now you understand the lining. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to do the 18 on the outline of the shell, and then use the 11 probably around everything else besides the smaller details, which then I'm going to use the 3 on. Alright, now that I've gotten all the lining done, my next goal is I'm going to start down at the bottom and try and finish out the shading of the tail, which the way I'll be doing that is when stipple shading, what I like to do is I'll take it, especially at a spot like this, I like to whip it out from the bottom, or from the nearest line that's going to have the heaviest shade. Like the bottom of the shell is going to have the heaviest shade over top of the tail itself. So starting from there, just kind of whip it out. And for me, I'll go over one spot more often if I know it's going to be darker. So the spots closest to the shell itself is going to be darker, so I'm going to be going over it more and with closer whips than all the rest of the tail. But I'm going to try and have some negative space along the bottom of the tail, so it gives a bit more variety and shade. I'm basically going to be doing the same thing along the bottom above this ridge of the shell, and along the rest of the spirals on the shell. The only part I'm not going to basically be doing the same whip shading motion is going to be for these lines going across the top of the shell, which I'll show you when I get to them. Basically, just doing the same as I was, just whipping out from the bottom. Trying to create as much darkness as I can to start with. It's not going to be too much shade along this because I want to keep a lot of this like negative space, but doing the same as I was on the other. Alright, now that I'm to these lines going across the back, what I'm actually going to do for those is going to be a little bit different from the whip shading that I've been doing. What I'm going to do for those is I'm going to go and kind of try to pendulum shade across them. Now that the shell is basically done, it's kind of back to the whip shading for the bottom of the snail's, like, I don't know what to call this, like head, I guess, like neck. I don't know if snails really have necks, but yeah. I'm basically doing the same as I did until I get to the eye stalks, which when I get to the eye stalks, I'm basically going to be doing the same thing I did for these lines, doing basically a pendulum shade in the center of them, going whipping down and then up as well. I believe that is basically everything for this piece. I'm sure there's a few things I can probably add, like probably a little bit darker shading right in this spot, but apart from that, I think it's basically done, and I think it looks really cool. But yeah, it's basically my foray into stipple shading, because I do feel like if you're learning to tattoo, stipple shading is probably the easiest one to go with, mainly because, in my opinion, using just one small needle and using it very quickly like you do with stipple shading, like going out like that if you need to, it will most likely do less damage to the skin, and you aren't working with as much skin at a time as you would be with, say, a mag. With a mag, you're working with a lot of skin at one time and have an increased chance of like doing more trauma, especially if you are still kind of learning. But apart from that, I think that that is basically everything. So if you guys like the video, I ask that you guys subscribe and leave a like, and if you have any suggestions or any questions, you can ask them in the comments. But apart from that, I hope you've learned something in this episode, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.